Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar and thank you so much for joining. I'm Caroline Plumb, I'm the Group CEO here at Amtivo and my career has been at the intersection really of people and technology. So today we're talking about a topic that is really something I'm passionate about because it really is at that intersection where AI and AI governance, what that means and what does it look like and what does good governance look like. Amtivo, we're a global certification and assurance group. We certify organizations to lots of different standards, including things you probably may be familiar with, like ISO 9001 or 27001, and lots more certificates beside that. We work with over 15,000 clients across 27 countries, and we've got offices in the UK, in Ireland, in the US, and Italy, and more. But at the heart of that, what we're really passionate about is helping small and medium-sized organisations achieve their certification and assurance in whatever is important to them. And we work across a whole range of sectors from aerospace, manufacturing, construction, financial services. We certify organisations across a whole range of cyber standards, whether that is digital assurance, data privacy, IT security, and now, of course, AI. So we do this for a living, not me personally, but my wonderful team here on the call, who I'm going to introduce just in a minute. But so today really is all about a practical, honest look at AI and how do you use it with confidence. By the end of the session, we want to do three main things. First of all, talk about how AI is used in the workplace today, the risks and regulations around that, and what you actually need to do about them. And lastly, what does AI governance look like in practice? And what's one proven route to doing that, which is a standard called ISO 42001. So without further ado, meet the panel. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but first up to Gareth.
Hi, I'm Gareth Parker. I am the Head of Operational Compliance here at Amtivo. My role is mainly around making sure that our certification and assurance activities are conducted in line with the relevant rule sets that we work to. I work very closely with a lot of our scheme teams that prepare these schemes like 42001, and also very closely with auditors, which we'll very shortly introduce one to you guys. For me, AI governance is really interesting because most people using it at work are not trying to do anything wrong. They're trying to speed up their workflows, gain efficiencies, but there are real risks to a business when you start considering how that's used and how that's governed. So it's quite an interesting topic to debate. So I'm looking forward to today.
Fantastic. Second up on our panel is Muzaffar.
Hi, thank you for having me on this podcast. I appreciate that. So my name is Muzaffar Mirza. I am the auditor and I audit globally for various standards from 9, 14, 45. 42 is a recent addition because AI is the new buzzword and it is the challenging issue organizations are facing at the moment. And with that, I do all other standards from, for example, 27701, 27001 and add-ons. And I'm doing this from last 7 years, and it's absolute pleasure to have on this and share my views.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And last but by no means least, we have Luke Elliott.
And yeah, hi, I'm Luke. I'm Chief Technology and Product Officer here at Amtivo. So I'm responsible for maintaining all the systems on the internal side for all our users so that the business can function using the latest and greatest technology. But more importantly, I'm also responsible for all the services, the technologies that our auditors use and our customers interact with. So very much customer focused, and AI governance is very important to me because of course it falls into my remit here within Amtivo and how we govern ourselves and the use of AI tools, both within technology and the wider business.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much. We're going to start off with our first topic, which is all about AI in the workplace. So according to IBM this year, 77% of organizations already say that AI adoption is outpacing their ability to govern it. And that's not surprising because as of June 26th, we understand that ChatGPT alone now has over 900 million weekly users and more than 50 million paying subscribers. And actually, of course, many more of the technologies like Claude and others are being, also widely adopted. So AI really isn't really on the horizon, it's probably already in the room. And in fact, right now, probably somebody in your business may well have pasted confidential data into an AI tool without asking anyone. So the question really isn't, should we use AI? Because that decision, frankly, has already been made by your teams, your people. And so the only question left is, has it been governed? So do you actually know every AI tool your team is using this week? And so let's start there. What's actually happening in workplaces, and why has governance moved from a kind of nice to have to a business critical? So let's start off with AI governance. Like, what exactly is that, and what does it mean? And in plain terms, I'm going to go to Gareth first of all. What does it look like, and what does absence look like?
So I think in plain terms, AI governance is being able to answer a couple of basic questions. So where are we as a business using AI? I think that's critical. Like shadow AI is a real risk to businesses popping up all over the place. I'll probably ask you on that in a second, Luke, on that topic. But so where are we using AI? What data are we allowing from the business, from our customers, internal intellectual property, whatever information we have access to, are we passing to these AI? And then what decisions is it influencing? And because of all those aspects, you start asking, who's accountable? Who is the owner for that AI? So there's a lot of questions around governance there that kind of come out of that. And I think being able to answer those are probably the most simplistic way to look at AI governance. From a technology point of view, Luke, I suspect that's probably the biggest thing to try and get your hands around and understand is, where are we truly using AI? Do you know every case of AI in the business?
Yeah. Why do leaders care now? Why now rather than wait?
So, I mean, we should have been on it from like every time it's come around. We should have been really close to the like heartbeat of AI. Like a lot of businesses have kind of assumed they had it under control, assumed we knew where all this AI was in use. But there's new tools arriving daily. There's new AI parts of products that are already in use, like Teams adds AI, all of a sudden Slack adds AI, Monday.com adds AI, and it's spiraling out of control, and it's just getting your hands around that to truly understand and govern it before it runs away from you, because you'll be chasing your tail otherwise.
So what AI risks are you actually seeing bite? What's happening, not in theory, but in the real world? I'll come to you, Luke, first, because obviously you don't just talk about MTivo, but at your network of CTOs, you must hear and see a lot.
Yeah, so I find it really interesting. You mentioned shadow AI, Gareth, and I think we've talked about shadow IT for many years. And what's the difference here? Is it just another form of shadow IT? And I think there's a lot of similarities, but I think a key difference is both in the power of these tools and the fact that a lot of these tools are actually being used to make decisions. And so I think that's where we see a lot of difference when I talk to other CTOs. What the kind of things that they're seeing a lot of are people outsourcing decision making to tools, and then maybe trusting the responses, being too confident in them. And that's both just using them conversationally as a chatbot, but then maybe sometimes even deploying solutions into a production environment, and non-engineers deploying solutions that make decisions, not fully realizing and understanding the limitations of AI and what the proper guardrails are. But then also the power of these tools mean that you can have people outside the engineering team writing, deploying, and running code in production against production data. And I've heard some real horror stories here of people who are very keen to make an impact on the business, but then maybe not realizing that they've actually gone and harvested a lot of PII, personally identifiable information of their customers, and then put that out into an uncontrolled non-production system that maybe doesn't have any safeguards around that. So seeing a lot of that.
Yeah. So okay. So lots of worries, and a real problem potentially around shadow AI. Is of all the kind of principles and and all the key risk areas, what do you see those being predominantly, Gareth, if you had to sort of bucket them into types of risk?
So I think I kind of agree with Luke there that the biggest issue, AI is very confident in its outputs. So it can be confidently wrong. You can read it, it sounds really professional, really succinct. However, the way AI works, and if it can't find data, it's got a habit of hallucinating and making up something that sounds legitimate. To an untrained expert, you'll read it and believe it and go along with that. However, it's hallucinated. So without that true human oversight, having a technical expert kind of back it up, ultimately a business remains responsible for that decision. If you've relied on AI to come to that decision, you as a business, your customers see that as come from you. They don't see that it was an AI tool that put that out there. So I think it's a human oversight and having that accountability are some key principles to kind of keep in frame around good governance. Transparency as well. When clients come to you and ask, where are you using AI? What are you using it for? So that's where having those kind of established use cases, what is allowed, what isn't allowed. Most people aren't adding AI to their day-to-day work out of an intent to do something wrong. They are truly trying to boost efficiencies, help the company and improve things. But it's just having them guardrails to kind of control it. Those key principles.
You talked earlier about accountability. You've used that word twice now. And with sort of AI everywhere, in all the different functions, lots of people using it. I think we saw one statistic that at least in the UK, at least 25% of businesses use AI. There was, here's a statistic from Microsoft recently that 71% of UK employees have used unapproved AI tools at work, and 51% do so every week. So, when you talk about accountability, how do you think about that in a kind of governance context?
So from a governance context, that who has vetted this? Who has looked into it and said that's got the right guardrails in place, that we can use customer data in there or intellectual property? Like you've checked it for those aspects, but also you've got the right workflow and mechanisms in place to allow a human to make the right decision. You shouldn't be freely using AI to make decisions on every topic. And proportionality comes into it, but the moment you start analyzing risks to outputs to consumers, to businesses that affect people, you really should have someone that ultimately holds the responsibility for making sure that's right. If it were to go wrong, your customers are going to blame the business. They're not going to say, oh, ChatGPT gave me a wrong answer. They're going to see Antivo or whatever your business may be gave me the wrong answer. There was a case
not Antivo, obviously.
Of course not. But there was a case in Canada with Canada Air. One of their consumers they were traveling for a family member who had passed away, so they spoke to the chatbot. The chatbot being overly helpful, customer focused, all these keywords that have been programmed into its prompting, then offered them a massive discount. So they bought these tickets at, say, 10% of the actual retail value. They traveled, and as they got to the airport, their flight had been cancelled, and they had to pay a massively increased fare to get that flight because the chatbot had offered them this discount. That turns out they'd then gone to court, they'd sued over it, and they were held liable for a decision that the chatbot said, yes, you can have that massive discount. So that customer was put at a disadvantage. Legally, they were held accountable for that because they are responsible for that being on their website.
So obviously you can't outsource that risk. You are accountable for it, but anyone can build the safest graveyard. So how do businesses know what is proportionate? You use that word, but what does that proportionality mean for a smaller firm?
So I think it goes down to a lot of management system standards. You're kind of looking at doing risk assessments and those kind of like, what is the likelihood of it going wrong and how catastrophic could it be, like severity? Right. If it were to go wrong, how bad is it for the business? And like AI summarizing a meeting that you were all present in, you all have a memory of it anyway. That's a fairly low risk case for AI. AI vetting CVs in a hiring mechanism, say, that's quite high risk because you don't know what data that AI has been trained on, any bias within the system, especially if you're using an outsourced AI system. You have a lot of safeguards and responsibility that you take that risk on, but have you checked is the key question there.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so we've talked a little bit then around like the initial scene. Like AI is clearly here in the workplace. There's some guardrails around it. And we've talked to some of that kind of background. I want to get into the nitty gritty now and talk a bit about regulation, risk, and frameworks. And I'm going to bring you in heavily here, Muzaffar, with kind of this whole area, especially with your auditor hat on. But I think then we think about the internal picture, and now let's talk about the external, regulatory picture. There's obviously lots of pressure now coming from regulators, coming from clients, coming from investors, coming from supply chains. Lots of people are now saying, well, what are you doing about that risk? How are you governed, and how can you prove it? So, we see this huge gap, and there's going to be increasing pressure from it, isn't there? We know already
Correct.
that there's the AI, EU AI bill,
Yes.
and that's, can you talk a bit about that and give us a little bit of context around
Yes.
what you're actually seeing customers and partners, being asked for when it comes
Yes.
to this area?
It's a very, very good question. And now auditing globally, from very largest to a medium size or SME type of organizations, when I spoke to the leadership and other participants of the audit and other stakeholders within the organization, it was very, very clear that from what I have seen, it's not, customer doesn't want to know, are you using AI? They don't want to know that. They want to know how you are governing it. That's the thing. Use of AI is actually given now.
Yeah.
Like every organization uses it. Irrespective they admit it or don't admit it, like Gareth and Luke talked about the guardrails and everything, but they want to exactly know. So like 2 years ago, for example, customers were mainly asking about cybersecurity, GDPR compliance, information security. 27,000 was a major focus because the standard came out a few years ago, but now getting to get traction on this. But today, in particularly public sector organization, law organization, supply chain, they all want to know how confident the organization is in using the AI and how it's been used. So from the EU AI Act and the UK GDPR perspective, it's governed by certain articles. For example, we talked about accountability and governance. So that is driven by Article 16, 9 and 29 of EU AI Act, and also complement. So you can't take just EU AI Act in one side and talk about it. There is the complementary side is the GDPR. Either you take a EU GDPR or a UK GDPR. It complements together. It talks about the AI frameworks, defining roles, documentation, AI policies, governance, and committees. So now the customers want to know, especially in tenders and tender documentation now, the customer would like to know, are you using AI within your product and services internally, operationally? What AI tools are you using? How do you prevent a leak of confidential information being entered into an AI platform? Because as we all appreciate here, any leak of the confidential data in public realm invite you problems across the board. And those sort of stuff, the tender documents are asking now, what type of human oversights you have, what type of bias assessment the organization is doing as far as the fairness and accuracy is concerned. So all these valid questions our customers are asking. So these are the customers who are very inquisitive about their data and how that is being used to see and to process. From investor perspective, when I spoke to investor, especially from the board side of it, they are increasingly aware that visibility is the main thing they want to see from the AI perspective, especially the AI risk, what it recognizes from the legal perspective, what is the reputational risk, what is the consequences of unmanaged AIs, what is the cyber resilience against it, what are the corporate governance and reporting side of it. So these are the investor questions which are thinking about it. From the organizational perspective, Caroline, I would say to gain a competitive advantage, AI is used across the globe now, and then they can demonstrate governance for being asked. They also treat AI governance as a trust issue rather than a simply compliance exercise in that way. So these are the few things which I have seen from my auditing experience across the globe.
Yeah. And do you think customers, when you talk about the end customer, do you think pressure is mainly coming from businesses that are supplying to governments, businesses that are supplying to financial services, businesses supplying to, like large multinationals, or kind of all of the above? Like, what's the mix that you think that where there's most scrutiny at the moment?
So the financial sector is under more scrutiny along with the healthcare sector. So just to give you a little example of that, an ex-client may use, for example, a medical client who does the testing. So for example, blood test, for example, X-rays and anything. So AI being used now in different parts of worlds in terms of interpreting those results. Now, this has come into heavy scrutiny from the governments of different countries just to make sure the result is actually appropriate and there is no hallucinations, because as we know, AI can develop its own hallucination, interpret a wrong result completely. And like Gareth said earlier, in a very confident manner, in a very professional manner, they will come across, which can be very problematic for the organizations. Financial sector, for example, I can give you a example which happened a few years ago when 42,000 was coming in. This was the issue where one financial organization tried to roll out an AI into their credit risk rating. And certain postcode of certain areas were selected, and people with good credit history, the AI actually started rejecting their credit history. And the people who had very bad credit history but living in a good postcode, they started approving it. Unfortunately, when it came into our auditing side and we gave an example of that, they had to stop it. They had to terminate the project. So all this investment all of a sudden went down. So from the AI perspective, I would say if any organization, doesn't matter what sector they are using it, absolutely, they have to. People are using it. There's no chance of not using it. I would say the main things and main factors are acceptable use policy. So they must be using that in a very, very nice, good way, fairness, accuracy, lack of hallucinations and all that. Data protection, very, very important. Impact assessment is something a lot of organizations are missing at this stage. They want to roll out a new AI feature, but they will not do an impact assessment and then do not go further to risk assess it with the human oversight. So those are the few things which I have seen from my side of it. So if anybody knows 27,001, they automatically thinks, oh, it's very easy. Let's implement 27,001. It's very different. The AI framework.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think a lot of organizations as well think that a standard like 27,001 or some of these cybersecurity or AI standards are only really applicable if you're kind of an IT services company. But I think what you really showed there is whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in construction,
correct,
whatever industry you are, this is a really important standard for you, and kind of that customers are going to be asking for it. So, and that's not just about customers and the expectations of customers, but it's also about the actual underlying like regulation and legislation. So, Gareth, I'm going to come to you, but like, what do you think the business should do now rather than waiting for the law? But also, like, what are the main laws that people should be thinking about here?
Well, so Muzza's kind of already mentioned a little bit, like you've got GDPR, UK GDPR, that comes up with all your data protection, information security. Automated decisions are also within GDPR as well now under Article 22. So there's that. There's the EU AI Act, which has particularly uses of AI, where you're using AI to potentially discriminate against humans and stuff. There's certain cases that are basically blacklisted where you shouldn't be using AI. So that there is that already in place. The UK so far, yes, there is a private bill, the UK AI bill. However, that has somewhat stalled, and at the moment in the UK it's very much sector and division led, as Muzz has mentioned, with healthcare and financial sectors. So lots of the sectors are leading the way in their kind of regulation and governance. But if I was implementing AI within my business, I would want to be ahead of the curve. It's one of those that AI is evolving daily. You can't just wait for the law to catch up. You kind of need to be like, get under control now, and once we're ready, we'll already comply with the law. So you should start thinking about governance now. I will kind of build on what Muzza said as well, that it's not just policies. Like, for better or for worse, with 27,001, a lot of it your IT department can kind of implement, and they can turn off access to certain things. They can implement encryption and stuff like that. That as a user, I don't really need a great deal of awareness of that I automatically comply with. Management of AI, it's about making sure your staff and your workforce are also trained and understand that for you to have an effective AIMS, like AI management system, everyone needs to know the implications of if you put data into the wrong system. So it's more about it's harder to demonstrate effectiveness because you actually have to train every single member of staff. We all play a part in that. Whereas historically 27's 80% relied upon your IT team's implementation.
Yes, it's going much broader then, isn't it? So how do you balance this innovation and risk then? When you want lots of people to use it, you want people to use it freely, but you need guardrails. How do you stop governance becoming a blocker though? What do you do with that?
I would go back to kind of I mentioned earlier about proportionality. I think it's understanding what the use case is, identify the risks, the severity if they go wrong, and put in an appropriate level of guardrail for something very low risk, very unlikely to go wrong. Like, don't let it like damage innovation whatsoever. Like, just go ahead, move as fast as you can with it. When there are increased risks, there should be some additional checkpoints and kind of governance, like what controls do we need to implement to prevent it becoming a worst case scenario. Like the fastest responsible adopters will be the ones that really like corner the market there. Fastest adopters will be great until it goes wrong, and it can go very catastrophically wrong very quickly.
So if there was one like guardrail that you've seen be really effective, and I ask all three of you this, what is the guardrail that a business could add tomorrow?
From my perspective, that the most crucial one, I kind of did touch on it again a second ago, is making sure everyone understands the implications with AI. So everyone's questioning it before, like whoever it may be, decides to pass information. It's all about awareness and understanding of what the worst case scenario is. It's like, we don't want that. Think about it before you act. So it's just that kind of awareness training, that basic level awareness. That would be my thoughts.
Okay, Luke.
I would have said something similar, but maybe I'll say maybe a second thing to put in place. I think that there's so many different tools out there that people might be throwing data into. So I would say maybe put in your accepted use policy, you'll have certain tools that you signed up for that people should be using. And so go and do a blame-free inventory of your entire staff of what other tools they're using in order to discover possible gaps in knowledge where people aren't quite sure that they've gone outside of the acceptable use policy. And I think there'd be many instances of these in every organization in order to start instructing them that there are some differences between the models, but they're not material enough, I think, to take that risk, and they should stick to the models that they've been approved for and have the right data privacy controls set up by your organization. Yeah,
and I think actually the key word in anything that you said there was the blame-free part, because I think otherwise people are scared, aren't they? And it kind of hides under the shadow again. So I think that's such a good tip. Muzaffar?
So all about whatever Luke Gareth said, 100%. From my perspective as an auditor, I would say the integrated governance which comes into the place. For example, the mix of the controls from information security, data protection, supply management, risk management, incident management, business continuity plays a very important part when something goes really wrong, and the organization should be equipped to decommission if something goes wrong. Take that accountability for part of it and say, you know what? Sorry, things went really wrong. Let's go back to the drawing board and do from our perspective, from their perspective. So that's the most, and data governance is the most important part of any AI model. If the data is not working for them, nothing gonna work for them, because this is the most important element. Is the data is a living, breathing model. Is the data is the soul of the AI, any AI model from my perspective.
Do that other ones miss.
100%. The right question to ask, Carolyn, in this, and very helpful for our audience who are listening to us as well in this regard. So the one thing we must understand as an organization who are trying to implement an AI system, the most effective organizations across the globe do not necessarily have a complicated framework. They will have a very simple framework. The best governance arrangement are often very clear, practical, embedded into existing management systems. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just do what we knew the best in that one. The strongest examples I have seen across this comes in 7 elements. And those are the living and breathing, simple, structured, straightforward models and a governance structure. It starts with an AI policy, which is clearly defined for yourself as an organization, not only for yourself, for your stakeholders, for your customers, for your employees, all the stakeholders, internal, external parties, which are going to read that policy. So who should approve it? Use of prohibition, data handling, data requirement, human resource requirement, escalations. Then it comes to the impact assessment. Who your AI model impacts? What are the demographics? Who will it impact? So we need to register that down. So that's what I have seen that the best one does. And then what it does is something really beautiful. Once they have done the impact, they will go ahead and they will do the risk. They will download the AI risk register into a little inventory, what Luke was talking about earlier. So everything is written down in an inventory where they will say AI system name, the purpose, who's the owner, what's the risk classification under EU AI Act and also GDPR. So we will also take the legal side of it, data types and use, review dates, how often they be reviews. Then clear accountability, what Gareth was talking about. I have seen that as well. very clear accountability in that one. Every AI system has a named owner. I've seen that very clearly. There is no ambiguity around who approves the risk, who monitors the risk, who responds to incident. It's a collective effort, and that's how it's supposed to be. Staff awareness is the most, it is the most underrated one. Trust me. Like Gareth was explaining earlier, it is the most underrated one. What tools are approved by the management? And most of the time you will find staff are using the tools organization is not aware of at all. They will use some tool and just feed the data, confidential data as well, which will cause a lot of harm. So what are the tools approved? What data can be used? What information must be entered? What human reviews are required when we are doing all this activity? So training plays a very, very important role, like Gareth was saying earlier. Then I talked about the number 5 on my list is the integrated governance piece, which talk about the various controls from information security, data protection, supplier management, risk management, incident management, business continuity. Rather than creating a separate AI, like very bureaucratic model, I should say we should be very mature organization to integrate AI into existing governance structures. It plays a very, very important part. Number 6, the most important, when the organization completely forgets, and this is where they enter into the area of non-conformances or not feeling very well, is the schedule review of AI.
Right.
They
so
just
you can't put it in, you go look at it again.
Correct. We always forget. Once there's one rule in the IT when I used to work in the hardware side of it. When something works, do not touch it. I think that approach with AI would not work at all here. Trust me. AI governance is not one-off exercise. It is best if conducted periodic reassessment, periodic reviews, risk reviews, internal audits, management reviews, and the last and the most important piece is the incident management. If something goes wrong, or if something has not gone wrong, it's a near miss, for example, what are the plans to make sure the damage is controlled? What are the incorrect outputs? What are the data leakage, biasness concerns, hallucinations, customer complaints? So they need to keep a log of complex customer complaints just to investigate and see how we can minimize those. And data model accuracy is very, very important as well. Regulatory notifications are something very, very important but ignored in the current world. And corrective actions. These are my seven top 2 setup for any organization aspiring towards the AI setup.
I think there's one thing I'll throw in there. Like a lot of this stuff, many management systems kind of cover on these bits. Like when you get customer complaints, like if you're to truly embed like a management system around AI, like my advice would be go and look at your current processes and try and build AI into it. Like, you'll have data security breach notification methods. You'll have health and safety near misses and notification methods. Add it as a new tab there where you go, we've had an incident related to AI. A complaint can be classified into an AI complaint. So that you're capturing it in your existing management system. It's having it like the golden thread through the business.
Correct.
It's often quite used in like auditing terminologies where everything is connected in one fluid system rather than having this is our management system for the AI. This is our management system for quality. Keep them connected and kind of leading together. Correct.
I agree with that.
So fantastic. So say you do, you've got AI governance and you're starting down this journey. Everything we've described as you're saying, the policies, the accountability, the evidence, it does already exist as a recognized standard. So if you want to be able to prove this to your customers, your team, your suppliers, then ISO 42001 is that kind of standard that gives you that ability to be certified to this. So what does it, where does it fit in? Like in plain English, what does it give you?
So can I? So from the auditor's perspective, it gives the reassurance to your customers, to your stakeholders, that the model we have implemented is a robust model. We take accountability for your data, and we ensure the outputs, whatever are given to a customer or to our stakeholders, are a legitimately correct output to a certain threshold, whatever threshold is defined by their AI model. I would say most probably 98%, they actually keep on training the model to give that percentage. And the 42,000 gives you the proper assurance from the leadership, because ISOs are heavily driven by the leaders of the organization. And that assurance is very, very important. with clear accountability, defined controls, effective oversight, legal compliance from the whole AI implementation perspective, ongoing monitoring and continuous improvement. And so that's the whole 42001 provides you in a nutshell. And one thing which I think most organizations miss, that the 42001 is a open connector. That means it can be integrated into other ISO standards. So for example, 27001, 27701, and other ISO standard we can be
And if you're not familiar
incorporated.
with those ones, do you just tell us both?
Yeah. So yes, that was a good one. Yeah. So for example, 9001 can be incorporated quality management system. 27001 information security management system, 27701 privacy information management system can be integrated very easily because they have the same structure what 42 has, the other standards has. So
it's a bit like a kind of Lego block. You can build them all together. They fit nicely, and you can do it all in one go. Yeah.
And I have seen some of the models in the past few months. Absolutely brilliant. They adhere to best practices. And one thing one of my clients said to me, and I'm very proud of that, because they said to me, actually, we don't care what the standard we want to go for. We want to know if it is safe.
Yeah.
if it works.
Back to your kind of trust point. Yeah.
Certification is secondary. We want to know if it works on the first time, and we want to take it further. And 42 gives that assurance from behind to give you that an expert has seen your system, has evaluated the system against it, and we are happy to provide or recommend a certification from an auditor perspective.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Gareth, do you see the same thing? What do you think? We obviously seeing huge uptake here at TiVo for 42000. Like, what are the key things that you're seeing clients bringing in?
So I think a lot of clients, like 42 hits their radar pretty early on, because it's quite a daunting thing being like, well, I know my business is using loads of AI. Where do I start? As Muzaffar said, it follows a lot of the tried and tested ISO management systems kind of formulas. So there's a lot of similarity in clauses and kind of identifying risks and how to handle them. But I think a lot of clients now are being asked about how they control and govern AI, which makes them stop and go, how do we do that actually?
Yeah.
And then usually that way is how they stumble across the standard and kind of like, oh, okay, there's a tried and tested framework for this. A lot of their drivers are kind of like, you're seeing a lot more requests in tenders and kind of contractual stuff now coming in around where you use AI and what goes into the AI. So that's making them have to stop, think, what am I doing? And then having to put something in place. So it's good to see that those conversations are coming up.
Yeah.
Biggest advice would be do it before it's too late. But
that's great advice. And you talked about, it being connected, but what are your advice if you're new to certification? So actually, you're coming from a place, as you said, that actually I'm really worried about AI, what's going on, what are my risks, but I don't currently have, a management system in place. What would you advise people to start with? How would they think about it?
So I'd start from, I think a lot of business, even if they don't have a management system in place, so as a business, you will have your way of working, whether it's a written down SOP or you're a really small company with 3 or 4 people and it's all in your head. You will all know how things are meant to be delivered and how things should be done.
Yeah.
So like even coming into 42, you can kind of have some conversations internally on like, where do we use AI actually, and kind of bounce off each other, even if you're a 2-man band to a larger organization. Larger organizations are more likely to have a bit more of a structure to it initially. But I think it's about getting that out of your head and documented in some kind of uniform policy. Like most companies that pick up 9 for the first time actually find out there's only 2 or 3 aspects of 9 that they don't already meet. They just might not have wrote it down. And I think a lot of 42 is when you stop and think about it, like, yeah, I did have that thought when we were considering using that AI, but I said not to. Did you write down you said not to? No, I just chose. I chose not to. So it's usually getting it written down and starting to document it, because most people have good intentions. You want your business to be successful and well. You think about a lot of these things naturally anyway.
And actually thinking about, so once you started to write it down and you started to document it, you eventually come to your audit. When you're auditing, what separates out the organizations that kind of sail through the ones that really find it hard work, or hard going?
So in terms of smooth sailing, I would say the organization who has adhered to the NXSL structure of the standard, and they're driven right from the buck, I would say, right from the leader.
Yeah.
Those organizations actually flows very, very straightforward. There's a clear accountability. There's a defined control in place. There's effective oversight from the top management and the person who is developing the AI. There's a legal overseen, it's reviewed, it's compliance, and it's all interrelated with each other with proper risk management in place. So if somebody will say, oh, I have a suggestive AI tool I'm using, so we will go ahead and then look at the suggestive side of it. And if somebody says decision-making AI of it, so we will take care from that perspective, from the leader's perspective. So it all ultimately boils down to the 7 elements which I have spoken about earlier. Those are the real elements, and it helps the organization smooth sailing in that one. Yeah.
And if there's one thing that you think most businesses that could fix, before the audit, but even just fix today, what would be the one thing that you'd all recommend that people focus on first?
I would say they should jot down what AI tools they are using in the first place.
Right.
That's the most important thing. What they are not aware of. The implications of the impact of that, and then comes the risk with it. So the EU AI Act talks about the high risk, low risk, medium risk, very high risk. It talks about all of that. And as an organization who are a very startup, I would suggest them the good point to start is have an AI inventory, the tooling, what tooling they have, and what impact or damage they can perform. That's what my advice would be for anyone. That's a good starting point as well from the organizational perspective, from the governance fundamental perspective.
Well, fantastic. And actually, that sounds like a really good place to start to wrap up, because I think anybody watching this webinar today, you must be curious about about this area. And it sounds like curiosity and finding out what's going on, both in this space, but importantly in your own organization, is the most critical thing to do. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Wherever you are on the journey, whether you're starting out or actively exploring certification, I hope it gave you useful context. If you'd like to find out more about 42001, keep an eye out for our expert training sessions coming soon. And one takeaway is clearly that it's not just the AI. AI is not the risk. It's AI without oversight. And so good AI governance is here what we're trying to do, and helps you move faster with more confidence. And as you said, just makes you feel safe. If you're weighing up your organization and where it sits today, or curious about it, please do get in touch with the MTivo team. We'd love to help you take the next step. And we're going to be sharing some additional resources by email, through our website, on our newsletter, and of course in socials. So for the latest news in certification and compliance, follow us across the board, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.